Donald Trump's Department of Justice continues to collapse, and now they are citing fake cases. Yeah, I guess when the law isn't on your side, just have AI generate fake cases and cite them. The real serious issue here, though, these are cases that involve matters of life or death. I mean, the detention of human beings, these immigration cases where you have people filing habeas corpus petitions for being unlawfully detained, other very serious cases. This idea that the Department of Justice is using AI, at least in this one case where a Trump-appointed judge called them out. Now, we've seen a lot of this with maybe pro se, people who represent themselves in cases. And there have been law firms that have gotten very serious sanctions for using AI and citing fake cases. The fact that the DOJ is doing it, the once exalted DOJ with all these resources that prided itself on legal research and that has, you know, a lot of the precedent is precedent that it deals with every damn day. I mean, let's face it, a lot of these cases, you know, I guess until Donald Trump destroyed the entire legal system, you know, when the DOJ case is a little bit of a rhythm with it, because if you're doing immigration cases, there's kind of the seminal cases that you cite over and over again. If you're doing civil rights cases, you have the seminal cases you cite. If you're doing criminal cases, you know, there's a series of cases that are in your repertoire. And sometimes there are novel issues that require deeper research. But the idea that they had to resort to cite AI fake cases in a very serious immigration case, and Judge Jarboe, a Trump appointee in Michigan, calls them out for it. And by the way, this judge should have sanctioned the hell out of him. The judge mocked him and said that it's a real serious violation. But any other lawyer I've seen in situations where this has happened has gotten serious referrals to the bar. Let me show you what happens in this case. The order talks about how petitioner, a United States Immigrations and Customs Enforcement detainee, initiated an action for a petition for writ of habeas corpus. And it goes on to talk about, what went down. And it says over here that the government cites a case, Taylor versus Hote, which is not located at the identified page of the federal appendix. Page 387 is contained with a different opinion, Atkins versus CGI, which is about commercial arbitration, not immigration bond determinations. In its research, the court was unable to identify a Sixth Circuit case with the caption Taylor v. Holt or any federal case containing the quoted language. And it goes on to say, it's no secret that generative AI programs are known to hallucinate non-existent cases. And with the advent of AI,
she is. By the way,
well
they're not
she
just
be eating. She needs to drop a few.
Melania Trump is spectacular in every way, and she is a dazzling representative of the United States.
She is a woman of strength and should be revered, not made fun of.
The woman is beautiful inside and out.
Melania Trump is one of the classiest, most elegant, smartest women I know.
And it's impossible for people not to have the pants charmed off of them when she shows up.
America and the world seems to have fallen in love with the First Lady.
It was 2:47 in the morning, and the President of the United States was still awake, still posting. One entry among dozens that would flow from his account overnight, part of a pattern of nocturnal truth social activity that has itself become a documented, recurring feature of his time in office. 60 seconds into a video ranting about supposedly stolen 2020 election machines, something changed. The Obama's faces appeared, smiling, superimposed onto the bodies of two apes, swinging through animated jungle foliage while The Lion Sleeps Tonight played underneath. It sat there on Trump's official Truth Social account for hours before anyone at the White House said a word. Welcome to USA Press. Tonight we're doing this one differently. Not tracing Michelle Obama's own commentary first, but starting with the single ugliest moment of this entire feud, walking through exactly how the White House tried to spin its way out of it, and only then getting to how the Obamas actually responded. And then, because we promised you we'd always bring the last 24 hours, we're pivoting into a court deadline that just forced the Justice Department's hand on the Epstein files, and a quote from a Republican congressman that should make every single member of his own party nervous heading into November. Let's start with exactly what happened, because the sequence of events over those following days matters enormously. First reaction from the White House, delivered by Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt when reporters asked about the video. This is from an internet meme video depicting President Trump as the king of the jungle and Democrats as characters from The Lion King. Please stop the fake outrage. Read that again. The official position of the United States government, in its first breath, was not, we're looking into this or this is being reviewed. It was, stop being outraged. The White House's first instinct was to defend the video's existence, framing an image of two black Americans, a former president and a former first lady, depicted as apes, as simply harmless Lion King fan content. That defense lasted less than a day, because the backlash arrived from directions the White House clearly wasn't prepared for. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, the only black Republican in the entire United States Senate, a close Trump ally, didn't equivocate. Praying it was fake because it's the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House, he said. Sit with that for a second. Not a Democrat, not a media pundit. The one black Republican senator in the country, a man who has spent years defending this administration, looked at this specific...
Courts have seen a rash of cases in which both counsel and pro se litigants have cited fake, hallucinated cases in their briefs. It should be obvious that any attorney who uses AI must scrupulously review its work product to ensure that the cases cited exist, you think? Although the court will not presently impose sanctions for this conduct, it goes without saying that the government must ensure its future filings with this court do not include non-existent case law and cases. Let's bring in Harry Littman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, podcast, and Substack. The government, in this case, serious case, citing AI hallucinated cases that don't exist. They were called out for it. Now, Harry, obviously it's a humiliating, but these are cases that involve human beings' lives, right? I mean, there's never a time where you should be citing AI cases, but like, you know, if there was a discovery dispute in some monetary litigation case, you know, when you cite something that stands for the proposition of requests for production of documents should be propounded, it's still very bad. There still should be sanctions. But when you're doing an immigration case, and Harry, you know, I mean, this is specialty stuff where you should know the cases. Like, why would you even need to go AI? And so if they're doing this, Harry, there's a broader pattern in practice that you and I have been covering at play, because this seems to be systemic in what's going on here at this completely without any credibility DOJ.
Dumbfounding. You know, it's out there, AI. You see certain ragtag folks or pro se lawyers caught. The idea that DOJ is using AI and submitting things to the court. Now, we've watched the systematic degradation of the department. All these people, professionals, have been hollowed out. They've had to beat the bushes and give bonuses and ice cream, who knows what, to get new people in, very inexperienced. I'm betting dollars to donuts it was one of these folks, because it's not, look, obviously complete incompetence and the like, but it's more than that. Here's how you file a brief, any brief, including continuance when you are at the DOJ and at a big law firm. You write it up. And yes, you will be putting in some sites that you're finding in others of your research when you first do a draft. This couldn't have even been that, right? Somehow they just said, oh, hey, ChatGPT, can you give me a good case that says blah, blah, blah? But it doesn't matter. At the end, you have a draft. And then there are these big carols at DOJ, and usually a support person, or maybe you yourself, will take the book. All of these are in books for every single case. Put them right next to you. Page 2, Marbury, take out the volume, look, and confirm. That seems kind of like uber conscientious. It's not. This is the DOJ talking to the federal courts, the disrespect. And by the way, yeah, he really did. He could have totally lacerated this stumble bomb. Instead, it should really be understood that cases cited to the courts.
My decision to skip the inauguration, you know, what people don't realize, or my decision to make choices at the beginning of this year that suited me were met with such ridicule and criticism. Like, people couldn't believe that I was saying no for any other reason, that they had to assume that my marriage was falling apart.
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, while I'm here really trying to own my life and intentionally practice making the choice that was right for me, and it took everything in my power to not do the thing that was right, or that was perceived as right, but do the thing that was right for me.
Specific video and said it was the most racist thing this White House had produced. Full stop. No qualifiers. By Friday morning, the video had been quietly deleted and the official story shifted entirely. Now it wasn't a defensible meme anymore. Now, according to a White House official speaking to reporters, an unnamed staffer had erroneously posted it. Except Trump himself, on Air Force One, undercut that exact cover story within hours. Asked directly by reporters, he said, "I didn't make a mistake." Then, in the same breath, he offered an explanation that contradicts the staffer excuse entirely. Nobody knew that was in the end. If they would have seen it, and probably they would have had the sense to take it down. Notice what he's actually saying there. He's claiming he watched enough of the video to comment on its content and structure, but somehow missed the specific 60-second mark where the ape imagery appeared, the exact detail that generated the entire controversy. A sitting president, describing his own review process for a video he personally posted from his own account in a way that simply doesn't add up on its own terms. It's worth including one more detail about the timing of the original post, because it adds real weight to how it was received. NPR's own reporting specifically noted that this happened during the first week of Black History Month, a detail that made the ape imagery land with even more force than it might have at a random point in the calendar year. The 62-second video itself was, according to PBS's reporting, overwhelmingly composed of material pushing conspiracy theories about supposed 2020 election machine tampering, with the ape imagery appearing suddenly at roughly the 60-second mark, lifted from a separate video that had previously circulated among conservative meme creators online. That the offensive content was tacked onto the very end of an otherwise unrelated conspiracy video, rather than being the video's central focus, is itself part of what made the White House's initial defense so strange. The imagery wasn't even load-bearing for whatever political point the broader video was trying to make. If you're finding this level of detail sharper than what you usually get, hit that like button right now and subscribe to USA Press, because we go past the headline every single time. Stick around, because the second half of tonight's report involves a court order that just forced something out into the open. It's worth noting one more genuinely revealing detail from this exact period, because it shows the controversy wasn't just generating external backlash, it was creating real friction inside the administration itself. Reports from this stretch indicated that White House staffers were privately—
Should be real cases. You think so? You know, this is example 10,422 of things that are now being done, as a result of which the presumption of regularity is out the window. And, you know, you've made this point and you're making it again when you point out accurately, we're talking cases with, on both sides, the defendants too, you have these real, live, important human stakes. And when you're this big a screw up, the damage goes to the public safety or potentially the constitutional rights of the defendants that you are duty bound to safeguard. And God knows, have there been other cases in which a district court hasn't punctiliously fly-specced everything that the DOJ says, but just takes it for granted? It's, after all, the DOJ, except it ain't your brother's or parents' DOJ anymore. It's the sort of thing that, you know, somebody would take a 6-month sabbatical or whatever. After doing this, it would be so, you know, completely humiliating. That place doesn't seem to have a lot of shame or humiliation left over, that you could even get to that spot. Even if you're a lazy guy, whatever, that somehow in your mind you can think, I know, I'll just ask ChatGPT and I won't double check it thereafter. You're a complete lunatic if you do that. But I think it goes to show that that's the newest recruits at DOJ, the ones who are left are in a sense the dregs. And, I'm thinking if I were you as attorney or back in Maine Justice and you do this and it shows up, you would be completely gobsmacked and personally affronted and go to that. How the hell could this happen? It's not like it's such an elementary error, and it's such an act of dishonesty, right? I mean, it's on top of everything else. You're making shit up, meaning, you're making representation credit and you don't even care if it's true. It could be straight up fiction. No wonder the presumption of regularity is just completely down the drain in so many offices around the country. This is so beyond the pale. And all I can say is, maybe in some terrible concatenation of errors, something like that happens. But if and when it does, all the way to Maine Justice, there's immediate kind of falling on your sword and remediation and all that kind of stuff. And this, I think, is just, that was a bad thing that happened Tuesday. It speaks so much of the lowered or maybe eviscerated professional standards at what once was, not long ago, the strongest law firm in the country or maybe world.
Harry, you were a federal prosecutor for many years. You were the top federal prosecutor in the Western District of Pennsylvania. You could probably write a book of war stories about unprepared litigants on the other side who came in and made all of the mistakes. Right. Now, it seems the current DOJ is going through a humiliation check the box ritual of every one of those mistakes that the pro se litigants would make, that that unprepared law firms would make.
Obama, listen to this.
And at this phase of my life, I'm in therapy right now because I'm transitioning. I'm 60 years old. I finished a really hard thing in my life with my family intact. I'm an empty nester. My girls are they've been launched. And now for the first time, as I've said before, every choice that I'm making is completely mine. I now don't have the excuse of, well, my kids need this or my husband needs that or the country needs that. So how do I think about this next phase?
Once again, speaking a reference to her time as First Lady negatively, and I'm transitioning. I mean, an interesting choice of words, given how the internet refers to her.
Furious with how the administration handled its response to the outrage, with internal frustration reportedly centering on the sense that the initial defensive posture, Levitt's "stop the fake outrage" framing, had made an already bad situation considerably worse by refusing to simply acknowledge the obvious problem immediately. That kind of internal staff frustration, leaking out to reporters in real time, tells you the controversy wasn't cleanly contained even within the walls of the White House itself. Let's talk about what happened after that, because Trump didn't simply let the story fade. He escalated it, weeks later, in a way that should have generated its own separate news cycle. On February 21st, more than 2 weeks after the 8-video controversy, Trump reshared a post from far-right activist Laura Loomer that referred to Michelle Obama by name as anti-white racist. Loomer's full post, which Trump personally amplified to his own massive following, read in part, "Making this more horrifying is the fact that if the Netflix-Warner Bros. Merger is approved, positive messaging of the Democrats' upcoming witch hunts against Trump from Barack Hussein Obama and his anti-white racist wife, Michelle Obama, would likely be blasted across all streaming services." Sit with the mechanics of that moment. Weeks after being forced to delete a racist video of the Obamas depicted as apes, after his own ally Tim Scott called it the most racist thing this White House had ever done, Trump's response was not contrition. It was amplifying a post that called Michelle Obama, specifically and by name, a racist, using language explicitly designed to invert the entire controversy back onto her. It's worth noting one final strange detail from that specific Loomer repost, because it reveals something about how these controversies get handled even in their supposed follow-up moments. Trump's own caption on that repost focused not on Michelle Obama at all, but on ranting about Obama's former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, meaning the specific line calling Michelle Obama anti-white racist arrived buried inside someone else's quoted text, allowing Trump to amplify the insult to his entire following, while his own added commentary pointed at an entirely different...
And the DOJ is doing it worse than ever. In many ways, it's like the revenge of the criminal defense lawyer who now gets to look at the unprepared unprepared DOJ and say, look what fools, the DOJ looks like. I mean, someone like you, Harry, you'd be upset if you were reading the brief and the parenthetical, had the parentheses, that wasn't in the right place, or had a semicolon that looked off.
All right. I'm a little anal, but that as a lawyer, but it would be much more than that, Ben. If I'm U.S. attorney and somebody files this, I guarantee almost any judge in the court would have my head on a platter. I want to see Mr. Littman in open court right now. What the hell is going on in your office? How could I'm sorry, Your Honor. It would be a crisis. And here it's a kind of Tuesday, as I say, but it's so beyond the pale. And yeah, it would immediately, and I'm thinking of judges on both sides of the aisle. It's like, are you kidding me? What kind of clown show are you running down there, Mr. Littman? And, it would be work to try to win back the credibility. That's all gone now. And they seem, nonchalant about it. Todd Blanche says, oh, we're still the good old DOJ getting up and doing the right thing. They are not the good old DOJ getting up and doing the right thing. And the assistants who are left are being downgraded for it. And the ultimate cost is being paid by the public for not having the best and the brightest or anything close to it out there enforcing federal law.
It's like Todd Blanche's hearing is kind of like Admiral Cooper of CENTCOM saying, the Strait of Hormuz is open. Everything is good.
Right.
Ships, come on through. Ships, you're free to go. Todd Blanche, nothing to see here. Everything is great. And, that's to me, Harry, where this isn't, I find myself on this network very rarely anymore, even talking about like the Democrat said this and the Republican said that. I'm talking about like the basic facts here. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. The DOJ is collapsing. This isn't a Democrat or Republican or independent. Although let's be clear, this is what the Republican Party has become under Donald Trump. They're okay with this. Apparently, and I just got to call it out. This is the behavior here is just unprofessional and sickening and malicious and reckless. Anyway, subscribe to Harry Littman's YouTube channel. It's called Talking Feds. Search Talking Feds on YouTube. Tell Harry that I said hello. And then you want to do something really, we could speak in a coded language to Harry. Tell Harry in the comments if you bought WTF America, the new book by the Midas Touch Network that comes out October. Say, Harry, Ben told me to tell you that I got a copy of WTF America, because WTF, Harry. That's why I wake up and I say WTF.
And I just want to repeat which is that severe and elementary and screw up. That means something's really wrong systemically. It's not just one crazy lawyer. That would be why judges wouldn't dress that lawyer down. They'd want the U.S. attorney. What WTF, Mr. U.S. attorney?
We'll never end this because I'll just keep going back to you. Because on a motion like this, there's the case law is the case law. Like, you become an expert in it if you're in this topic.
About the fact that, the week would start, something amazing would happen, and then by the end of the week, I would have forgotten all about that other amazing thing. I mean, our days were full. We were just inundated. So
target. That is a genuinely calculated way to spread an inflammatory claim. Attach your own name and platform to it, while directing your personal remarks elsewhere, creating just enough distance to make a direct rebuttal more complicated. Now let's bring in Barack Obama's actual, full response, because we only gave you a fragment of it in our previous coverage, and the complete version deserves to be heard. Speaking with YouTube podcaster Brian Tyler Cohen in a 47-minute interview, Obama was asked directly about the video and the broader pattern of cruelty coming out of Trump's White House. His answer began with something genuinely important. First of all, I think it's important to recognize that the majority of the American people find this behavior deeply troubling. He continued, acknowledging something uncomfortable about how this kind of provocation actually functions. It is true that it gets attention. It's true that it's a distraction. And then he made the argument that ties this entire saga together, that the goal of content like the ape video isn't really about the Obamas specifically, it's about generating exactly the kind of exhausted, oversaturated public reaction that makes people simply stop being able to distinguish which outrages deserve sustained attention and which ones are designed purely to burn through the news cycle, before anyone can hold anyone accountable for them. It's also worth noting Michelle Obama's own initial response, or rather, the deliberate absence of one, because that choice is itself informative. A spokeswoman for the former president confirmed that Barack Obama had no immediate response to the video when first asked, a silence that likely reflected exactly the same calculation Barack Obama would later articulate explicitly in his interview with Brian Tyler Cohen. Refusing to grant the moment additional oxygen, declining to let a deliberately provocative piece of content dictate the news cycle on its own timeline. The eventual, considered response came only once Obama chose the venue and the framing himself, on his own terms, in a full 47-minute conversation rather than a reactive soundbite. Let's fold in something else Obama has said that connects directly to this exact moment, because it deserves inclusion here. In that same broader stretch of commentary, Obama observed that
Donald Trump just held a disastrous press conference with President Ayoun, the president of Lebanon, at the same time. We know that the Trump regime is currently evacuating U.S. bases in the Middle East. At least a lot of bases are being evacuated, and military equipment and planes are being relocated to Israel because the United States simply doesn't have the munitions or the interceptors to protect these U.S. bases in the Arab nations, and they believe they still have the ability to protect the military equipment in Israel. There's a lot of other alarming developments this morning as Donald Trump was holding this disastrous press conference with President Ayoun of Lebanon. We know that Iran has been working with the Houthis to basically shut down the Bab el-Mandab Strait to Saudi Arabian tankers. The Houthis said they were going to do a blockade for Saudi Arabian tankers, and we've seen them make good on that threat. At least 8 oil tankers linked to Saudi Arabian oil have been turned around in the Bab el-Mandab Strait. Also, another development, Iran announced, and we believe there's confirmation in the region as well, that it was able to successfully target an Amazon data center in Bahrain, and the IRGC said it will soon be targeting Tesla, Microsoft, Google, Apple, Nvidia, and Oracle are all now legitimate targets in the region as they assist the United States military. We're also seeing Iranian strikes right now against Arab nations, striking U.S. radar, early warning detection facilities, and striking infrastructure in the Arab nations based on the United States striking the infrastructure in Iran. Israel's Channel 14 says the United States is currently unable to protect its bases in the region. Even they're saying there on Channel 14, it's evacuating, and they're saying that's why we're seeing all of this equipment come into Israel. But with all of this as background right now, Donald Trump's been saying during this press conference moments ago with President Ayoun of Lebanon, mind you, at the same time, Israel is striking southern Lebanon in residential areas. Donald Trump is now saying, once again, Iran really wants to make a deal. They're begging for it. They're begging for it. They really want to make a deal. We will not stop attacking them until they definitely want to make the deal, but they really want to make a deal. They haven't seen anything yet. We've been nice. We've been Mr. Nice Guy, but we will soon not be Mr. Nice Guy. They're begging. They're begging me for a deal, but I will bomb them until it is the right deal. We also are seeing U.S. service members who are now leaking video, and this is against the rules of Hegseth and the United States military. They're leaking photos and videos of the damage that's being done to these bases in the Middle East because they're terrified for their lives right now as the U.S. isn't protecting them at all. The U.S. may be moving their equipment, but these service members are in the barracks right there. Also, Donald Trump is posting weird AI images purporting to be Iranian women holding up things that say, "Stop killing us." They may be talking about you, Donald. You stop killing the little girls in Manab. Stop killing Iranian civilians. And you're posting AI images. What the hell are you even doing? Let's get to this disastrous presser that just took place. I wanted to give you all that background so you know what's been happening this morning. Oh, also, there's been another tanker or two that has been disabled in the Strait of Hormuz. I should mention that. Oh, yeah, and gas prices. The price of crude is over $91 a barrel right now, and prices are rising very, very high here in the United States. So a reporter asks Donald Trump, so there are no signs that Iran intends to stop fighting. And all of the intelligence reports that have been leaked recently said that you bombing them is not going to make them want to make a deal with you. So what do you say to that, Donald? And so Donald Trump starts yelling at this female reporter. How do you know that? You know something that I don't know? And the reporter says, well, I'm observing what's happening in the region. And Donald Trump's like, they desperately want meetings. They're begging for it. They're begging for it. You don't know anything. You're fake news. Here, play this clip.
Yeah. Mr. President, coming out of the White House, you needed that time to take stock and say, what just happened? What was that? And this book allowed me to do that and to really understand what those 8 years meant to me personally and how it fit into the context.
What he was seeing from Trump's allies reflected a fundamental lack of shame. A specific word choice worth sitting with, because it's a considerably more precise diagnosis than simply calling the behavior offensive. Shame, as a concept, requires an internal recognition that a line has been crossed. Obama's argument is that the entire apparatus around Trump, the staffers who post this content, the press secretary who initially defends it, the allies who amplify it weeks later, has lost that internal mechanism entirely. Nobody stops to ask whether something should be posted. They simply calculate whether it generates the reaction they want. Now here's where we make the turn, because everything you just heard is real, documented, and it happened months ago. What we're bringing you next happened in the last stretch of days, and it connects directly to a story we've referenced repeatedly on this channel, the Epstein files. It's worth briefly re-establishing the full history here for anyone catching up, because the arc of this particular fight is genuinely remarkable. Congress originally passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act after months of controversy over the Justice Department's initial refusal to release further files voluntarily, a refusal that came despite many top DOJ officials having previously promised full transparency. The House ultimately passed the measure 427-1, an almost unheard of level of bipartisan consensus in the modern Congress, after Trump abruptly reversed his own public opposition to the bill over a single weekend, once it became clear a backbench rebellion within his own party was going to force the issue regardless of his position. Attorney General Pam Bondi, asked about the files at the time, promised the DOJ would follow the law with maximum transparency while protecting victims. A promise that the subsequent court fight over unredacted names suggests the department has interpreted rather narrowly. A federal court has ordered the Trump Justice Department to release and unredact information in the Epstein files by a specific deadline, as part of a lawsuit brought by journalist Katie Phang. The court's order came after months of the administration fighting every possible step of transparency on this.
There are no signs that Iran is ready to stop fighting. So what is the plan? Is the plan to just keep bombing until they give up?
There are no signs. What, do you know something that I don't know?
Well, they continue to attack our allies and kill Americans.
You know what the dialogue is behind the scenes, that they want to meet desperately to try and end it because they're getting decimated. You don't get that when you listen to your fake station, but you don't know anything.
So talks are
you know
still
something
possible,
that I
likely?
don't know? Do you know something I don't know?
Well, tell us.
I will tell you, they want to desperately meet, and until they're ready to meet in a meaningful way, we have no interest in even.
Then the way Donald Trump describes 3 service members that we at least know of, I believe it's more, being killed in the base in Jordan. And there was another service member killed in Erbil, Iraq as well. Donald Trump says, this is how he describes it: Iran slipped something through in Jordan, and if we had other operators, that would not have happened. So Donald Trump is blaming it on the operators, and something just slipped. Just think about how dangerous this rhetoric is. Nothing just slipped. Every single day, Iran is shooting salvos of these ballistic missiles that are precisely hitting targets day in, day out. It didn't slip And Donald Trump blames, it's just bad operators. That's what did it. Here, play this clip.
But we are doing very well. We are degrading them at levels that nobody thought was possible. They're being degraded really so seriously. They did slip something through in Jordan, and if we had other operators, would not happened, unfortunately. But because we have the best equipment in the world, we've stopped almost everything. But when you let other people do your job, with the United States, we let other people do the job, and sometimes it doesn't work out so well. But we're going to be going and paying our respects.
Then Donald Trump is asked about Pickaxe Mountain. That's an area in Iran where it's believed that they may be reconstituting enriched uranium and perhaps building a nuclear program. And Donald Trump's like, well, I'm going to make an announcement right now. I'm going to hit Pickaxe Mountain. I'm making that announcement right. I'm not even worried because there's nothing they can do about it. Again, the level of one, dangerousness, because this now further puts a target on our troops in the region. Number two, the idea of escalating even more is going to be absolutely disastrous and catastrophic. And he just reveals the most highly I believe this war is unlawful and catastrophic, but just even think about it from an intelligence perspective. Dude's just out there saying, and here's what we're doing next, everybody. What are you doing? Here, play this clip.
Do you believe that Iran has moved nuclear centrifuges into Pickaxe Mountain? And when you say we're not done yet, what is left to finish?
Well, I think that they may have. We don't have it on record. All we do is read the fake news. We see the news is so wrong so many times. So, maybe this one they have right, but it's okay. It doesn't mean anything unless they have the material. You're talking about the centrifuges. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything unless they have the material. They don't have. We follow the material. That's where the action is, and we'll be hitting that area probably pretty soon. And there's not a thing they can do about it. Normally I wouldn't say that. If I thought they could do something about it, I would never say that. But we'll be hitting that area pretty soon, and very heavily.
Then a reporter says to Donald Trump, do you feel safe? Because, you're not going to be using the Qatari Air Force One anymore because he says it needs to be maxed out with all of this missile defense. Do you feel safe? And Trump's like, why? Why? Yeah. I feel safe. Why wouldn't I feel safe? Here, play this clip.
Say what?
Do you feel safe, especially considering the effects on your life?
I feel safe. Why wouldn't I feel safe?
Former First Lady Michelle Obama is back in the news. And she's promoting her new book. And in interviews, she's throwing more shade than an Amazon rainforest.
The former First Lady also referencing the current one and how, when they met after the 2016 election, Obama told Melania Trump she's just a phone call away.
Has she reached out to you and asked for any help?
No, she hasn't.
Exact issue, and the DOJ has already vowed to fight the ruling even as the deadline arrives. This is not a new fight. It's the latest chapter and one we've tracked across multiple reports on this channel. But the specific court order changes the calculus considerably because it removes the administration's ability to simply slow walk the process indefinitely. A judge has now put an actual date on the table. It's worth including one more genuinely alarming detail from this exact saga because it shows how far the administration was willing to go before that court order ever arrived. The New York Times reported that Trump personally invited Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert to the White House, specifically to pressure her into withdrawing her name from a discharge petition supporting the transparency push, enlisting both Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel to help make the case. When that direct persuasion effort failed, the Times reported the administration escalated to what people familiar with Boebert's thinking described as vague threats, an approach that reportedly backfired entirely, convincing Boebert there might be an active effort to conceal the file's contents and causing her to dig in further rather than relent. That entire episode, a sitting president personally deploying his attorney general and FBI director to lean on a member of his own party over a transparency bill, is precisely the kind of institutional pressure campaign we've documented across dozens of other stories on this channel, except this time it was aimed at a Republican ally rather than a media critic. And here's the detail that should genuinely unsettle members of Trump's own party heading into the midterms. Congress originally passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act with overwhelming, near-unanimous bipartisan support, forcing a reluctant Trump to sign it after a weekend of public reversal. 4 House Republicans in particular were credited with leading that fight against their own party's leadership. NBC News' own reporting now confirms that only one of those 4 Republicans will actually return to Congress next year. Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, one of the 4, put it in stark terms. Everybody's paying a price for it. Read that quote carefully, because it is a sitting Republican congressman telling you, on the record, that pushing for transparency on the Epstein files. Transparency the American public overwhelmingly demanded, transparency that passed the House 427-1, has become a genuine electoral liability inside his own party. It's worth including the specific detail from those Oversight Committee emails that made this fight so politically dangerous for Trump in the first place, because it explains exactly why the pressure campaign against Boebert happened at all. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released a trove of emails from the files that reportedly suggested Trump may have known more about Epstein's underage sex trafficking activities than he had.
Then Donald Trump talks about conquering Venezuela and bragging about taking over Venezuela and taking their oil. Play this clip.
I think people are very impressed. I mean, we took over Venezuela. We now have a great relationship with Venezuela. We went to war with Venezuela, and the war ended in one day. And we have now an incredible relationship with Venezuela. We're taking out millions of barrels of oil. They're making more money now than they ever made before, ever.
And then I thought this was very noteworthy right here, because then Donald Trump goes, and they're a very happy place since we've taken them over. But they've had this thing happen, this event that took place. They had a movement, a shifting of the earth. That's what Donald Trump refers to the back-to-back unprecedented earthquake that's killed thousands and thousands of people, and thousands still missing. I mean, it's going to be tens of thousands of deaths that's there. Donald Trump's like, I guess you would call it an earthquake. Let me further give you the red alarms that I've been warning about over and over again here. We know that fracking and drilling done certain ways and overloading terrain can actually trigger earthquakes. This was an unprecedented earthquake that took place. The fact that Donald Trump here has to also say, and it was unrelated, and it was unrelated to that, I think is the biggest help. And again, as I've said before, I don't want to veer into a conspiratorial area and start to say this is definitely what happened. But there are lots of red flags here, folks, and no one else wants to talk about it. Here, play this clip.
Very closely with the administration, and we get along very well. Venezuela is a very happy place. I had a tragic incident with the, with the event that took place a a week ago. What a terrible thing that was. They had a movement, a shifting of earth that was unbelievable. They've never seen anything like it. A lot of people were killed. So it's all unrelated. But by the way, we were the first ones there to help. We were there to help Venezuela. It was an earthquake, I guess you'd call it. It was a pretty massive earthquake. And we were able to do a lot of good. But they lost a lot of people. Venezuela, the people are so happy that we're there. The jobs, everything's happening, and we're taking out many, many times the money that we spent on the war.
Then Donald Trump says, nobody knows the damage we've done to the Iranians, except the Iranians. Nobody knows but me and Iran. They are desperate. Here, play this clip.
Now, nobody knows except the Iranians the damage that we've done to them. We have done damage that will take them 20, 25 years to recover from. So if we left tomorrow, we had a big success, but we're not leaving tomorrow.
Then Trump's like, if we left right now, it would take around 50 years to rebuild because we've obliterated and we're not finished. We're not leaving right now. I mean, you literally sound like Hitler. You literally sound like the worst we're not leaving. You are a predator, right?
Is previously acknowledged, including one email in which Epstein himself wrote that Trump knew about the girls. That single phrase, surfacing in the exact same news cycle as the White House's pressure campaign against Boebert, tells you precisely why this administration was willing to deploy its Attorney General and FBI Director to lean on a sitting Congresswoman. The stakes of what those unredacted files might ultimately reveal are personal, not merely political. Let's connect this directly to why that matters so much in the context of everything we just walked through about the Obamas. Both of these stories, the ape video and the Epstein files fight, share the exact same underlying dynamic, an administration that reaches instinctively for deflection and distraction the moment real accountability comes into view. When the ape video controversy broke, the White House's first instinct wasn't reflection. It was stop the fake outrage. When the Epstein files pressure mounted, Trump's own public position, delivered from the Oval Office, was to call the entire push a hoax and insist the country focus instead on what he called the most successful 8 months of any president ever. Same reflex. Different subject. Redirect, deflect, wait for the news cycle to move. It's worth including the voices of the survivors themselves in this story too, because their presence is what ultimately forced the entire fight into the open in the first place. Epstein survivors spoke publicly at the US Capitol in support of the transparency measure, with one describing years of what she called institutional betrayal, a direct, personal indictment of the exact federal apparatus that had spent years promising accountability survivors never actually received. That specific testimony, delivered by people who lived through Epstein's actual abuse, is what transformed this from an abstract political fight over document redactions into the kind of moral pressure campaign that even reluctant Republican leadership eventually couldn't ignore. Let me give you my full analysis of why the only one of 4 Republicans surviving detail matters so much more than it initially appears, because I think it's a genuinely significant data point for understanding where this administration's actual political vulnerabilities lie heading into November. Trump's approval among his own base has weathered an enormous number of controversies without meaningful erosion. The ape video itself, despite Tim Scott's—
Is there any doubt why this guy was found civilly liable for sexual assault? He's a predator. He's a sick, disgusting, psychotic predator. Play the clip.
So if we left right now, it would take around 20, 25 years to rebuild. Okay? And we're not finished at all. But if we left right now, it would take them a long time, years to rebuild. But we're not leaving right now.
Then Donald Trump, you can just see how like reporters just view this whole Oval Office thing like a clown show. They're like, you told the Iraqi prime minister he's handsome. What do you think about President Ayoun of Lebanon? Here, play this clip.
Question, please. Last week you met with the Iraqi prime minister and discussed him or described him as handsome and saying he could become one of the best leaders in the Middle East. How do you describe
Which one are we talking about?
The Iraqi prime minister. Yes. How do you describe President?
Well, I'd say he's handsome also, and I think he could become one of the most important leaders in the Middle East, actually, if we do this, because they've been trying to do this for decades, right? Decades and decades. So if I made that statement about somebody else, I would put him in the same category.
Then Donald Trump attacks Canada and says they need us to survive. They need us to survive. Here, play this clip.
But their leadership, from Trudeau to the current leadership, I mean, in all fairness to them, they need us to survive. Without us, there's no way they can survive. So, but they've been very, very tough over a period of the last 50 years, actually.
Then Donald Trump says that he's speaking to Hezbollah, which he isn't, but he just lies about literally everything he opens up his mouth and says. Let's play this clip.
Are you still speaking with Hezbollah? You said in previous interviews that you're speaking with Hezbollah.
I wouldn't say that, but I would speak to Hezbollah, yeah. I speak to everybody. I'll speak to people that a lot of people think I shouldn't be speaking to, and things work out. I would speak to
Mr. President,
I would say this, if the president wanted me to speak to Hezbollah, you know, he's lived with Hezbollah for a long time. And if the president wanted me to speak to Hezbollah.
Then a reporter says, what's your view about the Houthis in Yemen's threat that they will shut down the Bab el-Mandab Strait in a blockade against Saudi ships? And Trump's like, there's no indication of that happening at all, but we will deal with it if it happens. There is an indication. If you just look at the VHF radio frequencies, you can actually see and hear the 8 tankers. If you see this, it's not actually all that complicated. You can hear the tankers turning around and being warned by the Houthis to turn around, and then they turn around, confirming on the VHF frequencies. And then you can see on the satellite footage that the ships turn around. That dude lies about every damn thing. Here, play this clip.
What is your level of concern of a blockade of the Red Sea by the Houthi rebels, opening up another front in the war?
We'll see what happens. So far, it hasn't happened, might happen. But we take care of things. If something like that happens, we take care of it. You know, we've done that with the Houthis before. and we haven't heard from them in a while since we did what we did originally. That was about 45 days of very powerful action we took against the Houthis. And we've had no problem with the Houthis. They've had no problem with us for a long period of time, including during this conflict. I think that if there is something like that, we'll just have to take care of business.
Then Donald Trump says, the Iranians, they were killing the protesters back in January like candy. What do you mean like candy? Who refers to people as candy? And 52,000, didn't you say it was 40,000 last week? The problem with the Trump regime lying about literally everything and then posting AI images of Iranian women. And
I'd rather have somebody who was ready to do some hard things with me. But that meant I also had to be ready to do some hard
condemnation did not appear to move Trump's core support in any measurable way. But the Epstein Files issue has proven different because it cuts against a specific promise Trump's own base spent years demanding he keep. Conservative commentators, for years, insisted Trump would release those files the moment he returned to office. When he instead spent months resisting, deflecting, and eventually calling the demand a hoax, it created exactly the kind of intra-party rupture that a purely partisan controversy like the ape video never could. Because this time, the pressure came from inside his own coalition, not simply from his usual critics. It's worth noting one of the most surprising names to join this fight, because it demonstrates just how far the pressure extended beyond the usual partisan lines. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, one of Trump's closest and most reliably loyal allies in the entire House, took the podium alongside Epstein survivors specifically to demand more transparency from the executive branch on this exact issue. When one of the president's most devoted supporters is standing shoulder to shoulder with sex trafficking survivors demanding accountability from that same president's own Justice Department, it tells you the underlying moral weight of the survivors' testimony had genuinely broken through partisan calculation, at least temporarily, for at least some members of Trump's own coalition. Let me give you my prediction section now, clearly labeled. Prediction 1. Expect the court-ordered unredaction deadline to produce new names and new documents that generate fresh news cycles for weeks, not days, because every previous release of Epstein-related material has followed that exact pattern. An initial document dump, followed by weeks of individual reporters and lawmakers combing through specific names and connections. Prediction 2. Watch for more Republican members of Congress who supported the original transparency push to face primary challenges or retirement announcements before 2026 concludes. Because Massey's "everybody's paying a price" comment suggests this is an active, ongoing pattern rather than a completed one, and the same forces that pressured Boebert with White House visits and vague threats are unlikely to simply stand down now that a court has forced the administration's hand on the underlying documents themselves. Prediction 3, and this connects both halves of tonight's report. Watch for Trump's team to attempt exactly the same distraction playbook we saw.
Then just going from 40,000 to 52,000 to 30,000, just making up numbers, is that when there's actually a serious thing that goes down and you're trying to analyze actually how many protesters were killed, what's the actual number when Trump promised that he was going to help the Iranian protesters? Remember when Trump said he was going to help is on the way, rise up right now, I've got your back. We don't know what the real number is. The guy lies about every single damn thing. The guy who told you that the reflecting pool was torn up by vandals. That's the guy who's talking about the 2020 election and doing that. No, sorry, don't believe the numbers. Don't believe his numbers at all. Here, play this clip.
Extinguished. But I believe that by doing what we did, by terminating Iran, who's very evil people leading that country. You saw the number of protesters that they killed, 52,000 plus. I put a couple of them up today, young kids, they kill them. They kill them like they're candy. It's crazy what they do. They treat them so badly. They're just killing people just at random. Over 52,000 people, and nobody talks about it. But if I didn't do the attack on their nuclear sites, or if I didn't terminate the Obama agreement with Iran, which was an absolute hit on having them that was a road to a nuclear weapon. And our deal will be a wall. It already is. They can't have a nuclear weapon right now. We'll take them.
Then you have Hegseth saying, and here's the thing, we gave Iran every opportunity to comply. They refused to comply, so we will hit them 10 times harder. Hikes it out. Here, play this clip.
President Trump was, and continues to this day. Iran's been given every opportunity to negotiate, to show that they're reasonable on the Strait of Hormuz. But if they're going to shoot at commercial shipping, then we're going to hit them, as the president said, 10 times harder.
Okay. You realize what a fool you look like. You realize that Iran right now is surgically hitting early detection, radar facilities, bases, desalination facilities. After you strike their desalination facilities, they're not just going blow for blow. They're going about 10% more than what you're delivering there. And they're hitting precise things so that if and when this escalates more, you don't have early detection. You don't have radar. You don't have the HIMARS. You don't have any of that. And then Donald Trump's like, but here's in conclusion, America's never been better. We're in a golden age. Everything's amazing. Everybody's rich. Everybody loves me. Goodbye. Here, play this clip.
Thank you all very much. We're doing very well with Iran. We're doing unbelievably with the economy. We have investment. As you know, Toyota is coming in with the biggest plant, I understand, anywhere in the world. They're leaving Mexico. They're coming into our country. They're going to come into Texas, to be specific. We have more plants under construction now than at any time, by far, by many times. We have over $19.2 trillion being spent in America.
Michelle, Merchant of Death Obama.
The bitter half of the Obama administration.
Maybe we should call her Lady Michelle Obama. It's like we have a king and queen.
Michelle Obama is so like the Duchess when she speaks about...
With the ape video, a fresh, unrelated controversy, timed deliberately to compete with whatever the unredacted Epstein documents reveal, because that redirect and distract pattern has been the single most consistent tool in this administration's entire communication strategy. It's worth connecting both halves of tonight's report to a broader pattern we've tracked across this entire channel, because the through line is genuinely consistent, regardless of which specific controversy is generating headlines in a given week. Whether the subject is a racist video, a member of Congress facing vague threats over a transparency bill, or an entire party grappling with the political fallout of finally being forced to confront documents it spent years promising to release, the operating instinct from this White House has remained remarkably stable. Deny first, deflect second, and if neither works, simply wait for a bigger story to arrive and hope the public's attention moves on before anyone can extract real accountability. The genuine danger in that pattern is not any single controversy. It is the cumulative effect of a strategy that has, by this point, proven itself durable enough to survive dozens of individual scandals that might have ended a different administration entirely. It's worth briefly explaining the Netflix and Higher Ground Productions detail buried inside that Luma repost too, because it reveals another layer of what was actually being alleged. Higher Ground is the Obama's own production company, responsible for a range of documentaries and films distributed through Netflix, and Luma's post was specifically suggesting that a pending Netflix Warner Bros. Merger might somehow amplify what she characterized as anti-Trump content produced by that company. That framing connects a private media merger, a former president's production company, and an alleged personal grievance into a single conspiratorial narrative. Precisely the kind of tangled, difficult to fact-check claim that spreads effectively online, specifically because untangling every individual thread takes considerably more effort than...
Donald Trump is crashing the United States economy as he further escalates his catastrophic war in Iran. In the real world, not in Donald Trump's fraudulent criminal world, the United States has not brought in $19.2 trillion. If we brought in $19.2 trillion, then why is the debt going up over $3.5 trillion in this year alone? Why has the total debt, and I know a lot of people aren't talking about this anymore because they just want to cover up for Donald Trump and MAGA, but the national debt is approaching $40 trillion. Donald Trump has added basically 30% in his presidencies to the overall national debt. Let's just take a look at charts, not Donald Trump's fraud, to talk about what's really happening in the economy. And you know what's happening in your economy, in your home, in your apartment. You know the struggle to pay rent. You know that housing is not affordable. Groceries are not affordable. Gas prices are going back up right now. let's just talk about the data, because that's what we do here at the Midas Touch Network. You want to take a look at the traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. You know how Donald Trump says, never before have we had such good traffic. It's like never before so good. Actually, if you take a look right here, it looks like to the left, the giant wall from Game of Thrones, and then everywhere to the right of it is where the traffic is right now. Traffic in the Strait of Hormuz is at a complete standstill. There are no ships leaving the Strait of Hormuz, as now it appears Iran will escalate in response to more of the war crimes being committed by the Trump regime and perhaps shut down the Bab el-Mandab Strait in the Red Sea. At the end of last week, oil prices are up 20% over the past 10 to 15 days or so. Oil prices were approaching $90 a barrel. You have Treasury Secretary Bessent, in my opinion, trying to manipulate the market by bringing in certain whale investors to short the crude market and try to bring down the price there. But the crack spreads, they don't lie. That's the difference between the refinery price and the price of crude at an all-time high there. Those crack spreads, like $86 a barrel. The crack spreads are higher than the price.
We're here. We're just we're in another house.
Yeah. We need you back in the old house.
Well, there are other people living there.
How is unemployment going? Are you embracing it?
Yeah, it's going okay. And I was just trying to think of what we've been doing, but truthfully, we're boring.
Especially given how quickly a story this complicated tends to get flattened into a single soundbite instead of the full, connected timeline it actually represents. Subscribe to USA Press and turn on notifications, because between the Epstein Files court deadline, whatever documents get unredacted, and whatever fresh distraction this administration reaches for next, we are not going anywhere. It's worth sitting one final time with the sheer symmetry between these two stories before we close, because it is genuinely rare for two seemingly unrelated controversies to mirror each other this precisely. In both cases, the initial public defense offered by this administration did not survive contact with basic scrutiny. In both cases, the eventual walkback arrived only after the political cost of continued denial became too high to sustain. And in both cases, the people closest to the actual harm. Tim Scott, speaking as the Senate's only black Republican, the Epstein survivors speaking of institutional betrayal at the Capitol steps, were the ones whose voices ultimately forced movement that the administration's own internal instincts never would have produced on their own. That is, in the end, the through line connecting nearly every story this channel covers. Real accountability rarely comes from the institutions themselves, choosing transparency voluntarily. It comes from the people directly affected refusing to let the story simply fade away. Drop a comment and tell us, did Trump's Air Force One explanation actually make sense to you, or did it just dig the hole deeper? And do you think more Republicans will pay the same political price Massey described before the midterms arrive? We want to hear where you land. Stay sharp, stay informed, and remember, the excuse that contradicts itself in the very next sentence was never really an excuse at all.